far away from me, Lorraine. Glorious. Betty? Louise? Yes, this is Kate. $800. We ready, Ralph? Are you ready yet?
Have you had a good week?
Pardon?
Have you had a good week?
Yeah, it's been interesting.
Haven't seen
yeah.
her, no.
Interesting. What about you? Yep.
So we hired a B&B, so my brother David from Perth.
Yeah, I haven't done all that. That's
We were
Beryl.
able to go there, went to a restaurant,
You tell us when you're ready.
Yes, yes. Could I have those? Purchase those too? Okay.
Did you hear from Diane?
No, not.
I'd be surprised if
What's
you
that?
That book's for
Not
sale, would. Bob.
That's a sitting
Yeah,
room.
$60.
That's a
Oh, I
sitting
love the
area.
fire.
And they have lounges all over the
That is
place,
the
and
new
they have seating
That is the
around
new one.
fire itself.
That's the last one they'll get into Australia. They've only our got house about, at Brocklesby. oh, you'll have it. Okay, that's good.
Looking down toward the door.
I only brought one. I've got about 3 more at home to sell, and that's it. Once they're gone, they're gone.
That's looking at
Yeah.
the main building.
Yeah, okay.
So it's a
Did you find out what it was? Oh, look, I'm
And that was
got a bit of noise, have we?
the Griffith Group singing.
Yes. Yes. Okay. You haven't switched on Beryl yet, have you? Okay, so we ready in 143?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Okay, everyone. Yes, we can hear me. Well, welcome to our program this afternoon. Well, this morning it isn't it? Getting a bit muddled up to start off with. Okay, and over the last year, I've done programs on natural remedies, on different ways we can improve our health right through last year. And I was trying to think, what can I do? And I believe you would all agree we're facing some incredible times in this Earth's history, things that are really happening that have never happened before. And so I wanted to share with you some different ways that we can preserve food. We can, obviously with dehydrating and bottling, and how can we prepare for the future? Well, over the year, last year, I have had the pleasure of having a group of people come to my home, and we love talking about different things. We're actually studying the scriptures together. But one of the ladies there has just revealed that she has got so much knowledge on this. And she talked to me about different ways of preserving. And we're going to talk about that. And one of the ways she was talking about was pressure canning. Now, I have to admit, I thought that I knew how to preserve food, but she told me, and she's just opened me up to a whole new, completely new whole concept. So, I'm going to share with you. Beryl, you come over here, Beryl. So, Beryl, we're going to talk about different ways that we can preserve food. But first of all, we're going to share with you, and we'll cover, first of all, we're going to talk about dehydrating. Then we will talk about preserving, as in the colas, which most people would be aware of. Then we're going to talk about pressure canning, which is the one that's very new to me. I had no idea that even such a thing existed, because when I heard of pressure canning, I didn't realise that we're talking about that. I thought canning, and most people think, oh, do you have to have cans to can? Now this is just what the Americans call it. They call it canning. Well, as you can see, Beryl's, we bottle here in Australia, and we're using bottles. We're not using cans, because who can seal up a can anyhow? So when we're talking about pressure canning today, we're talking about pressure bottling. That's what we're talking about. Okay, so Beryl, we're going to talk first about dehydrating. Now, what sort of foods do we have? Maybe we can have a look. Most of you know about dehydrating, but I don't think you would have done dehydrating at Beryl's level. When I opened up and I saw what she has dehydrated, I would thought, wow, this is incredible. Okay, so Beryl, let's just talk for a moment. Come over here. Let's just talk about this for a moment. This is right, Gloria. Gloria says what Beryl doesn't know about this, it's not worth knowing. Okay, so Beryl, she's had a large family, and she used to can for years and years and years and years, didn't you? Mm. And you also, where did you learn a lot of the things from about food preservation?
Very early in my marriage, I met a Russian lady, and we went and visited her, and she went into this big garage, and it was really long, and she opened the door, and she just went like this, because I couldn't speak the language, so I walked in. I'd never seen anything like it. It was better than any supermarket that you've ever seen. Everything was on floor to ceiling, 25, 30 foot long, just shelves and shelves of food, and she had meats and things hanging from the ceiling naturally. But that was like, yep, I want to do that. So I sort of kept my eyes open and struggled and learned. And then when I had my children, I had a sick husband, and I had to sort of learn how to survive. And 90% of it is survival for life, survival skills, when you don't have any money and you've got a garden.
Yeah, so Beryl she had lots of kids. She actually had 10 children, and she didn't have a lot of money. And so It's true. We have to learn. And this is a mentality that I want to share with people now, because even though we might be affluent now, all of you will agree that all of it could be taken away just like that. We have to know, how do we prepare? How do we, and to a degree, I know that we can't prepare to the extreme and have everything planned, but we need to become educated. And most of us, especially the women here, we've got survival thing. How do we prepare for our kids? How do we prepare for our families? How do we prepare for people? What do we do? And I liken this, it's not just about me. Now, in my family, our kids have left home. There's only Peter and myself at the moment, and you now. Okay, so we're really on our own, but all of this is preparation. We're ready to help our family. We're ready to help people. It's not just our family. We need to have things ready to help people. Okay, so Beryl, let's just talk. You all know about the dehydrating. Everyone knows about dehydrator. Can you just show your dehydrator? It's a round one?
It's a round one.
There's different types of dehydrators you can get.
You can get small ones and large ones. My last one I had for 30 years.
Just lift it over here in front so Ralph can...
And it did not owe me a cent.
We'll just lift it up
On
a
top
little
of the
bit.
things there, yeah.
This is the dehydrator, and you just put your shelves on there.
On top. And when you do thick things, things like vegetables, and you can even do rock melon and watermelon and everything like that in there. Anything that's thick, you could put a spacer on and then put the next shelf on. I didn't clean that, I had capsicums in it. And then you put the lid on, turn it on.
And it warms. And you've got a temperature that warms and tells you how to get it. Now, if you don't, this is like mid-range to a little bit higher and expensive. I have what you call an Excalibur, which is the Rolls Royce of dehydrators, right. And it's a cabinet, a little square cabinet. Probably I paid something, 400 and something. I've forgotten what it was, but you wouldn't get much change from 450. And I think I bought the sheets with it because you can have Teflon covered sheets. No, they're
the small ones.
But there's ones that you can actually put liquid in.
Herbs and things.
That's
the other
for
ones
herbs.
you can put liquid in.
Yeah.
I didn't think of bringing any of them. Sorry.
Okay, so you can have Teflon coated, or actually not Teflon coated. They're silicon.
Silicon.
They're silicon. They're not Teflon. Sorry.
The ones that they make roll-ups out of for children. Yeah. You pour the pulp on and you let it dehydrate, and then you just roll it up for the children.
Now, what I did, and I'll just show you one of them here. This is a little sample of what it is. That there is just a little roll-up of blood plum. And I've just cut it in half. I've got it all wrapped in Glad Wrap. But if you saw it there, it's just a roll-up. Now, and when I do all mine, I don't, like, for instance, a roll-up, I don't put sugar or anything in. It's just, and some of them, fruit, like blood plum, is quite tart. It doesn't dry very... Can you see that one there? Okay, so that's what that is. So you can do roll-ups, and I do a lot of roll-ups, and mine, because mine's square. But as I said, the Excalibur, I don't know what these cost now. Do you remember what the price is?
No, I don't. But you can buy cheap ones, small square ones. Yeah. Even Aldi's got them.
Yeah.
But they have them on special.
You don't have to get the Rolls Royce of them. So you can get a small one, and you can do it. But that's
and you can use your oven too if you've got a good oven.
Yeah.
I'll put that back over in the box there.
Okay.
That way.
Now let's talk about, let's say and if you come to my home, you will know that I have a garden full of carrots that I have not dug up yet. Okay, so Beryl, what am I going to do? How am I going to prepare some of these vegetables?
With carrots.
Yep. And a lot of the vegetables.
Yeah, a lot of the vegetables that go in the dehydrator, you need to blanch. That means put them into boiling water for 1 or 2 minutes, depending on what kind it is. And then you plunge them into icy cold water. then you drain them. I drain them on a tea towel on a rack up off the...
We'll talk about why we have to blanch them in a minute.
Yeah, they've got to be blanched to keep their colour and to kill any bacteria that's in them, you know. And when you spread that out onto your sheets, those sheets that you looked at there, or whether they're square or rectangular or whatever, you can spread them out and they dry. You'll watch them, they'll dry like what Kay's got here, like that, the onions.
This is zucchini.
Yeah.
What I found, and I like, if sometimes you'd see these little, these little, I've forgotten what they call, but feed your vegetables in it and you turn a handle and out they come grated. Okay, now there's 2 size graters that you have with these things, and I use the larger size grater, and I've grated all of this zucchini. Now last year I had zucchini everywhere, and this year I had none. We'll talk about, if we've got a chance, we'll talk about that later. But you've got yours.
I've got zucchini, and I've got one of those plunger things that you push them down and they all come out in different sizes. You can make it round slices. You can make it long ones.
Yeah, and what you do, they say if you use dehydrated, and I've got some at home and I didn't bring it, like these long ones, when you rehydrate them, you can put them in your, and these are lasagna sheets.
Lasagna sheets, yeah.
Like you cook and you bake something and you put the dehydrated in and you lay it out like lasagna, and you get your own lasagna.
Yeah, and see these, they come, you can use them, you want them for different things so that the food doesn't get boring, especially with a family. So that's why I do all the different ones. And
why have you got these round? Have you got anything in mind for round ones?
No, that was just something that the kids, they chop them up into circles, so I just thought, yep.
Now these actually haven't been sealed. These are just like, they're not sealed.
That one's not sealed.
Yeah, okay.
This one is sealed.
So you've sealed some of them in there?
Some of them, yeah. So no, not in there, just heated the jars, put them in, sealed them with boiling.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you put them in boiling water?
No.
Okay.
No, otherwise they'd be extra cooked again.
Yeah.
And you don't want that because they're already dehydrated.
Yeah.
They've got nothing on them. You can season the dehydrated, you can season the vegetable when it's on the tray. You can put garlic powder, mixed herbs or anything like that and do that. I did that with some tomatoes that I did, if I can find them. These are only cherry tomatoes, the little cherry ones. I cut them in half. The ones that I flavoured with basil and pepper and a little bit of salt and something else, I can't remember. I had neighbours come and visit and they ate them all on me, so these ones haven't been flavoured. So
okay, so for a tomato or something, you'll need to season it because, as I said, to eat who wants to eat plain zucchini? It's very ordinary. Although they say if you can just put a little bit of seasoning on it, maybe a bit of salt, you can actually make zucchini chips in there.
Yeah, you can make zucchini chips. They're very easy to do.
Now let's look what else you...
Pardon?
Would you use oil?
Not in the dehydrator because it won't dry. See,
okay, so if you want to do oiled, semi-dried tomatoes, do you do those?
Yes, I have.
How do you do yours? And I'll tell how to do mine.
I put mine in the oven and let them sort of go like that, and then I sprinkle oil and herbs on top of them. Then I put them in a jar and I put oil on top of them.
Okay, so you don't dehydrate them like this if you're doing semi-dried tomatoes?
No, I
okay,
don't.
There you are.
They're semi-dehydrated in the oven with the herbs to sort of sterilise them.
Yep.
And then I put them in the jars and keep them in the fridge.
Okay, so but what I do, and maybe it's not the way to do, I actually have dehydrated some of these tomatoes and different tomatoes like this. And I just rehydrate them with a little bit of water, and then I put them in oil, and they don't keep long. Yours would keep longer.
Not that, yeah.
They don't keep long, but they're long enough and they taste very nice.
And what is nice is you get the different coloured tomatoes. the yellow ones and the red ones, and you dehydrate them. And they look really, really good when you put it on a platter, with other foods.
Okay, now, and one other thing which I found, have any of you gone looking for dried onions? You find them very hard, and when you find them, guess where they're grown? Grown in China. Who wants to buy food grown in China? So what I did is I went to Arnold's, but now you can go, and I've been to Harris Farm because I live over this side of town. It's easy to go to Harris Farm, buy a big bag of onions, and guess what? You can actually dehydrate them. And I just slice them all up in a mandolin, because actually it's nicer to have, when you're slicing things, to have them all the same width and height, so it's much easier to slice in a mandolin.
Now, Clever, the name Clever, things, they have a plunger thing. I didn't think of picking mine up. And you tap it on the top, and you put the vegetable in here, and you just tap it, and you set it on the back. It just comes out all these slices. I used to slice onions for my husband for the men's shed barbecue. That's a sick joke. After what I just went bang, 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 and they just come out by the mile on the bottom. And I thought they're all the same size.
Yeah, you need, when you're dehydrating them, and it's really good to get
Do it
them
outside.
all the
Onions
same,
are best done outside.
all the same width. Because if you've got some fat pieces, which you're liable if you cut slicing them up, they take so much longer than the thin pieces. So if you've got them all the same, it's not necessarily for appearance sake, but it's drying sake that you get them the same. So what I did is I dried all these off, and I had this, and I'm going to tell you, your whole house reeks of onion when you're drying it. And everybody will come in and say, whoa, what's going on here? Well, I just dried, there was nothing else. It's just pure onion on all my sheets. I've got 9 shelves on mine. They're like a little cabinet, and you put them in there. And I put them in there, and they just dry and come back. And I've got a timer on it. You can set it with a timer on. You come back maybe 16 hours later, and it's dry. And what I do is always, when I'm drying, I make sure that I put it on the right time of day, so when I can come in, my 16 hours doesn't finish in the middle of the night. Okay, so I make sure that I put my dehydrating in the afternoon, so then it has a chance to dry overnight, and I can look at it in the morning. And then I crumble it up and put it in my jars, and I've got all dehydrated onion. I mean, that is a lot of dehydrated onion in there, I can assure you. If you want to make onion powder at it, and goes the same with garlic powder, you have to grind that up into a grinder, but you also have to put it back in the dehydrator and dehydrate it again a little bit, otherwise it'll stick together. Because it's been in the whiz bang, or what do you call it? In that thing, in the grinder, the air's got into it again. So even though it's dry, so it needs to, if you want to be able to not have it set like a rock in the jar, which is what happened to my first lot. Yeah, it will. It'll set like... You've got to do it twice. You've got to do it, once you grind it, you've got to dehydrate it again. How long, I've forgotten, but, it's not it doesn't take that long. Yeah, probably that for a few more hours after that, but it's not like, it's got to be dry. And what they suggest is if you don't know, make sure it is dry, because if it's got a little bit of moisture in, you'll come back and you'll see mould, and the whole lot has to be thrown out. And so what they say is if there's a little bit of mould, seal your first jar, put it on the counter for maybe 2 days, check if there's any moisture in there. If you see moisture in there, it's got to go back in your dehydrator, and it's got to be dried out more, because moisture is the killer. You cannot have any moisture in there. So these are as dry as a bone. Yep. Now, the other ones are these, which you've got some of there too, haven't you? Yep. What's some other interesting things? Now, what I done here is I bought... Okay, blanching them, what Beryl said. By the way, if you don't blanch them, you go to use your vegetables and they'll be as tough as anything to cook. That's part of it too. Yeah. They are so tough. Yes?
When you
I grate my vegetables before I blanch it, okay? So that has to be all grated up. And obviously, I've got a clever thing too, a clever brand, little a little turner that grater thing that comes out and it's beautiful. It goes through so quickly. It's as sharp as anything.
But even just grating it on a grater, which is what I was
that's
doing.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can do, if you haven't got those things, you just got to use what you've got. If you've only got a knife, just use a knife, okay?
Or a potato peeler.
But what I found was if you buy, and you can actually, let's say I've got a mixture of carrots, peas and corn in here. And guess where? You've got the same, you've got a bit
except that I had some leftover dehydrated potatoes, so I stuck
you've got some
potato in mine.
So you've got them. But these are actually just packets from the supermarket. Because guess what? They're already blanched. So if you don't, it is an advantage to buy the frozen veggies. And so I just lay frozen veggies out. And by the way, you don't go to Aldi to buy your frozen veggies because they're all Chinese. Okay, you go to the Coles have it, and so a Safeway, and you look for the Australian grown ones, mixed veggies, and you buy them. And they're probably a bit dearer, but that doesn't matter. I'm happy to buy and I usually probably about 3 or 4 kilograms, 4 kilograms at least, or 5 kilograms to all spread out that fills up my dehydrator. And so that's incredible because and you use probably about a quarter of a cup of them will swell up to about a cup.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're obviously very dehydrated.
And the other thing is that you can have the vegetables and you can, have like dried tomatoes and you can grind them up and make like a cup of soup, a camping mix, you can do that and have that on the side so that, lunchtime you just go to your jar and just take a couple of spoonfuls out and put hot water on.
I can remember going away to visit, and we were travelling around, and we went to what we call a church camp where there was different people, and there was this woman there, and she's into dehydrating. She left, and her and her husband, they drove from South Australia, and she had all her meals prepped before she left home, and she had everything. She had, let's say she had a lentil curry. Guess what? She dehydrated that lentil curry. And when she had to prepare the meal, all she had to do was pour hot water over it and she was ready. It was already cooked. She'd cooked it before she dehydrated it.
That's what the silicone trays, you can do that yourself on the silicone trays.
But what she did, she said, what she did is that she actually worked it out, how heavy it was before she dehydrated it. Then after she dehydrated, she worked out how much moisture it lost. So she wrote on the packet, this needs a half a cup of water. Yeah. This needs a quarter of a cup of water. She worked out how much water she needed to put into it. Because if you've got it and you don't want to just add water, how much do I put in there? We don't want it to be, maybe you have to just, it can be a little bit of an experiment, but it doesn't have to be totally. She also even did hummus. She dehydrated hummus. So everything she had with her was dehydrated.
My friend made a green curry and put it in
That was this one.
It was this one.
Yeah, but we're talking about dehydrating. Any more things you've got?
She's setting about dehydrating this now with what she's got at home. That's what she's.
Okay, she's also got some dehydrated mushrooms. Ideal. What else have you got, Beryl? Apples.
Apples.
How do you do your apples? You core them, obviously. Well, I cored mine. I've got a few in a bag here. And over the year, this is 2 years ago, and they have actually just a little bit discoloured. They didn't discolour when I ate them, but they're still so nice.
Yeah, well, my pears discoloured, and they were brown pears anyway. But
what I did when I used apple, I actually sliced them up on a slicer to get them all even, remember? And then I dipped them in a mixture of salt water and salt water. Interesting, salt water. Just probably a teaspoon maybe to a litre of water. And I had a bowl there, and I just dipped them in and then put them on the tray. And that keeps the colour and it stops them.
Some people use lemon juice too, yeah, or
Yeah.
any citrus juice actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, this is leeks.
Dried leeks.
Dried leeks. They come out all right. Figs.
Oh, yes.
They're half. Yeah, they took forever to dry.
I've tried figs too. They take ages because they're
Yeah.
very hard to dry.
Cubed potato.
Are they cooked first?
No,
They're dry.
no, they're just blanched. Just blanched. Yep. And I did this as an experiment. They're chilies, by the way. And I just stuck them in whole like that.
And
was
they've
an
shriveled up.
They
Yeah,
shriveled
there
up.
you go.
They work. And you can make normal mash. You can dehydrate. When you cook your mashed potatoes, you steam them. They must be steamed, not cooked in water. You steam them. Then you mash them up. You never put anything in them. No salt, no butter, no oil, no herbs, no nothing.
That's
Then
only for mash,
that's for mash, yeah.
not if you were...
No, not if you're doing that, no. Because we're talking dehydrated.
Yeah.
And with this, and then you mash them all up. I had forever trying to put them on the silicone trays to dry out. Then I got the masher there one day and I just turned around and I just went, oh, you know how it's got the little holes? You get these round ones and they got the little holes, so I just got that and cut them all off as I was doing it. That's how dehydrated them like that, and they come out. That's how they dehydrate. And then you just add, I add a bit of milk to it and a bit of salt and pepper and herbs and what else?
Okay, this here,
You have to cook that fully for your mash.
yes, the mash one
the
is
mash
cooked.
must be cooked,
And
steamed.
it has to be steamed.
Has to be
But this
steamed.
other one wasn't. This was the other one was just
That was just
raw.
blanched. See
This
the
was raw.
difference? See the difference in colour?
Yes.
Yeah.
This one here is dehydrated celery.
Yep.
Celery. What else have you got, Beryl?
Peas from my garden.
Peas from the garden. Yep.
Hang on. Red cabbage.
Red cabbage. I have done a lot of cabbage too. I forgot to bring that. But that's, you know, look, it's all looks like a leaf. You can do your kale, you can do bok choy, you can do all of those. And sometimes we had a garden and they'd all come in and you got that much bok choy.
The thing is that with the dehydrator, you buy, example, if you're in the shop, you buy a bunch of silver beet. 1 or 2 people aren't going to eat a whole bunch. There's the rest of it in there. And the celery leaves, I cut the leaves off, and then I just grind them up later on or put them in something and turn that into celery salt. Done twice. Ground, and then put back into the dryer again.
And you've got red capsicum and green capsicum here, obviously. I didn't. I didn't
What's
blanch
that?
did you blanch your green leaves, your cabbage?
No, I didn't, no. I just washed them.
Yeah, I didn't blanch my cabbage. I
Washed
just
them and, you know, take
Yeah.
time, yeah.
red capsicum.
Red capsicum.
Obviously, you can do peaches and in your dehydrating, your peaches and
These are leftovers, like, you know, the last minute, you know, oh, I've got 3 or 4 tomatoes. Oh, still a capsicum there. So I just make them up like that. And I fill the jar, just munch it all up and turn it into something.
and guess what here she's got? Strawberries.
I love strawberries.
Can you imagine how to dehydrate strawberries? So, how did you dehydrate them? Did you blanch them or just
No, I didn't. I just sliced them.
slice them?
I'm looking for something in particular. Oh, I got our favourite. Banana. And this banana here, I haven't got a fork on me, is not, I was going to give everyone a piece, but I can't get it out. It's not hard. You know, you buy banana in the shop and it's as hard as can be.
Maybe could we put a little bowl of those on the table and you can taste one?
Yeah.
Okay.
And they're
for later
just
on.
absolutely beautiful, the
Yeah.
banana.
Do you salt those or put
No.
a
No.
vinegar?
No, I slice these really thick and just whack them in a dehydrator.
How thick are they? What?
I slice them that
centimetre?
thick.
About a good
Yeah,
centimetre.
good centimetre thick, yeah.
Oh, we'll leave that for lunch, hey?
Yeah, leave that for lunch then. Yeah, okay. Thank you, Aldina.
Yes?
How do you keep them that colour? Because I've dried bananas and they are soft, but they tend to go a lot darker in colour. But maybe I cut them too thin as well.
That could be, or you didn't have your heat high enough.
Okay.
You need your heat. You need the heat fairly high to start with, and then I always turn it down towards the end when I'm watching it.
And
But
I
as,
think
as you can see, that
I know
is.
that they taste beautiful and they're really soft. And I've looked at
Yeah,
mine yesterday
see.
cleaning the pantry, and they're literally, I've probably had them for over a year sitting there, and they're not mouldy or anything. I'm like,
They're a year old at least.
yeah.
Yeah, they're at least a year old. 'Cause
and look, a lot of these can be. How many years do they last for? I tell you what, if I
Now-
was hungry and if they was 5 years old, I'd still eat it. Yeah, okay. That's right. Mold's the killer. If something molds, you've got to throw it out. No hesitation.
Now there's green beans blanched. See how dark they've gone? They've gone very, very dark now.
They've blanched.
They're blanched. They're
Right.
green beans, and I blanched them and just cut them into pieces that big and put them in the dehydrator. But even with all the beans I've done in the dehydrator, when they've been blanched, come out very dark. I don't know about that. Of course, there's your grated zucchini again. Yeah.
Can I ask, so say the strawberries and the beans, like you explained with the potato, how you can, I think Kay may have said it, how you just then can use the butter and just milk if you want.
After.
How do you then do it, say, with strawberries or with your beans or whatever? What do you do then if you want to use it for a meal? Because you're not going to eat them the way they are there. I'm sorry.
No.
there's some-
No,
Okay,
it's
so
all right.
what we'll just
No.
repeat the question. Okay, so how do you prepare this for a meal? How do you prepare
For
these?
the
and use
beans,
them?
you take the beans out, put them in some water, soak them, and then you could continue to cook them as you wish. Add them to something once they've been rehydrated. Put them with a sauce or whatever you wish. With the strawberries, I just turn around and put a little bit of moisture on top of them. Then I just add a bit of lemon juice and sugar. I know
Okay,
sugar's no
so-
good for you, but yeah.
So when you're using a lot of these things, you will have to rehydrate them first before you cook them.
See,
Okay.
that's something I've tried, but I've eaten dried fruits and dried whatever, but I haven't actually done the rehydrating part. So
I tell you what. Also, I use these are persimmons, dried persimmons. Our son-in-law has this huge tree, and they're just persimmons everywhere. And I dried buckets and buckets and buckets of them. Not last year, the year before, and I'm still
they are
using.
canned.
They're still using them. And
They
so what
can.
I do when I'm using them for breakfast, I'll just throw these in because I've got a little bit of grain, just a small amount cooking for our breakfast every morning. I'll just throw in maybe a couple of these, and they'll rehydrate overnight, and in the morning they'll be cooked with it. I just stir everything through together. And sometimes I use nashies, which these are as tough as anything. They are the hard little nashies. They're not terribly nice to eat, but look, you know what? They're food. And
Yeah.
guess what? You eat them. They're good. You know, some of these things, even though they might be tough, they're very good fibre to go pass through you, and they're very good for your digestion.
Yeah, I have a friend, and she gave me half a box of bok choy, and I thought, what am I going to do with that? There it is. That's half a box of bok choy, and I'll just pull that out and throw that into soup, stew, whatever I'm going to cook up, whatever.
Okay, so is that nearly all that we've got there, Beryl?
So your green leafy vegetables, you usually, you don't worry about
No.
blanching.
No,
No,
Fruit, you don't worry about blanching.
no.
no.
But some of those, like carrots, beans, yeah,
Hard
they
vegetables, yeah.
Must be blanched.
Now this is chilies, the hot chilies. Now what I'd preserve them for sprays for my garden. You know, they do really well when you don't need as much, you know. If you're going to make a spray for your garden or for your food or whatever. But also there is one thing else. Chilies. Where did it go? I've lost it. Don't know. It's all right. Okay, don't worry about it.
Anyhow, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But this, I said to Beryl, what is this? Guess what she's been dehydrating?
Rose petals.
Rose petals. Why do you want to dehydrate rose petals?
Potpourri for one.
Potpourri.
And you can make rose petal jelly, rose petal jam, whatever, you know.
I never thought to...
Rose essence.
I never thought to do that. I mean, I got to admit there.
Oh, yeah. Dehydrated banana skins for the vitamins for the garden. You know, I just chop them up with a pair of scissors and just wait till I've got a few and then just put them in
because,
on the
you know, when
side.
you're growing things, your
It's
garden
the
loves
best thing out for orchids is
They love orchids.
orchids love the nutrition from the banana skins. So does everything actually. You know.
I've dehydrated avocado pips, and the avocado pips, when you actually dehydrate them and then you crush them up, they actually have 4 types of vitamin B. So
Yep.
you can use them as a powder and put a teaspoon of it in your food or whatever, and they
Okay.
actually cover 40, I can't remember the types of vitamin B, but there's 4 different types of vitamin
That's
B.
right.
Avocado pips are absolutely brilliant. for
Okay, so I'll just repeat that. So I'll just repeat that for the recording, that you've dehydrated avocado pips. Do they shrivel up?
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they
Okay.
do. So what I do is you'll just rinse the avocado off and you peel the skin. So you might have to just put it in hot water for a few hours in a cup of hot water, peel the skin, and then the avocado itself, you can just slice up, put it in your dehydrator, really dehydrate it properly. I never did it twice though, but it still hasn't got mould in it. But they can crack, like, you know, when you dehydrate something, if it's dried properly, it'll break in half.
Okay, there you are.
Yeah, and then you crush it up.
And then you crush it
Actually
up.
crush it
Put
up
it
with
in
a
your
teaspoonful
grinder, in your
and it
whiz.
Covers 4 different vitamin Bs, yeah.
Vitamin B.
Anyone
You know
that's
what, I
got-
believe that this is the way we're going to have to get a lot of our vitamins. We're going to have to use it. Because, you know, can I also tell you, while I think of it, possibly some of you may be on medication. Do your best to get off your medication now, because I believe soon you won't be able to get medication, or it'll be very, I'm going to say rare, it'll be harder to get. So do your best. Get off your medication now. And obviously you've got to do it wisely. You can't just stop. But if you're on blood pressure or whatever, do your best. Okay, so I think that's nearly all we are now dehydrating, and we'll move. What's this one?
Is nuts that have been marinated and put in a little one of them
That's
things.
a vacuum sealed bag.
Yeah, one of them, one of them things, yeah.
Yes, I know. And you've got marinated nuts.
Marinated nuts. I did not make these, my friend up the road. They're mixed nuts. It's hazelnuts, almonds, Brazil nuts, macadamias, there's all sorts of nuts there. But you can make up like a marinade. It can be not sweet, you know, the savoury mayonnaise, a savoury marinade or a sweet marinade. Soak your nuts, and then you can put them in something like that. They'll keep forever.
Okay. Great. Okay, so we're going to move on now to canning.
Oh, hang on. What about
What?
peel?
Oh, peel.
Now, lemon peel and orange peel are good for this time of the year to have on hand, and you don't have to seal the jars, you know. Just add it to a cup of hot water with honey or anything else if you're not well. But why just use the juice? Why not use the skin as well? You know?
Yeah, lots and lots of
Yeah.
nutrition in their skin.
And plus that it goes well with potpourri, with the things
Yeah,
like
for
that.
your potpourri, yeah.
But it's great for just for, and if you're flavouring something, if you're flavouring sago or anything that, any vegetable or anything that you wish to do, you can drop a little bit of this in. And it just gives it a hint. Mandarin peel is another one that's fantastic to dehydrate. Fantastic smell throughout the house. There's so much wastage, we don't realise how much that there is. But all these things can be used. You can flavour desserts and vegetables and sauces with all these.
Okay, so we're going to move now on to preserving. First, we'll talk about water preserving, which is what I knew. This is what Beryl's done. Look at her beautiful apricots there that she's gone, and she'd do them in vacolas. Here they are. Well, you've got peaches there, and you've got cherries. Now, I have had access to blood plums. These are blood plums, but they've been preserved whole, and then they put in vacolas, and they've been preserved. Most of you would know how to do that, don't you? Okay, if you don't, it's sort of like you have to use water, you have to cover the bottles with water, and you have to allow them to bring up to the heat, and you hold them for a certain amount of time, and then you can take them out. What I've done with mine, and we've had a plum tree, 2 plum trees out the side of our house for years and years, and they're gone now, but I miss the blood plums. And so what I used to do, how do you work blood plums up? Because these, if you got a...
I have an electric one and I have another I actually have 3 Fowler's things, and I have one that sits on the stove, so that makes 4. They've just been graduated over the years.
But have you got sugar in them?
No, water.
No, just water. See, I'm the same. I just use water in mine. But I found what I find with plums, it was much easier to stew them first. And I put just in a pot, I've got a pot about this high. I put about not even a cup of sugar in there. Not much sugar at all compared to, because they are so tart if you don't add a little bit of sugar to plums.
The other thing is, in one of my freezers, there's about 4 bags of blood plums. And that freezer's going to be turned off because our power bill's going up and I don't need that other freezer. I will be putting them into the Fowler's jars. You know, now I'll take them out of the freezer, and of course you'll get the drip of the moisture out of them. Then I'll just stew them gently.
And these were stewed first, then I put them in the vacolas, and then I do them again. So really they have been actually treated twice, first in the stew. And this is the same I've done with some peaches. Now, they are 2 years old, and they've discoloured a bit, but they've got no sugar in them, and they've been stewed, and we'll just use it. There's no added water in there whatsoever. It's just pure, and the peach, the bit of juice that's in there was its own juice that it tends to make as it heats up. And we have that all the time. I have got loads and loads of water thing. And the other one that I've got is tomato. I make heaps of tomato. That is just pure tomato, no water whatsoever, just pure tomato. Place them in a blender and whizzed. So that's got the skins and all. But you can't put that in the vacolas, in any of these jars, because it's got air in it. You have to put it on the stove, bring it to the boil, get all that air out of it. And really all you've got to do is bring it to cook. And you'll see all the foam starting to disappear. Once the foam, then I will process that, pour this into these jars, and then put them in my vacolas, which I've got an electric one. And when you're using any jar, there's a little button on the top. When that sucks in, that means that it's sealed. If it hasn't sucked in, it hasn't sealed. And so I have got loads and loads of tomato. That's how because I, like Beryl, want to get away from freezing. Years ago, I'd freeze all these things, and you know what? That costs money to keep your freezer running. But yet this is so easy to go and use it.
I do tomato passato. I cook my tomatoes, and then I have a machine that actually takes the skins and the pips out. But previous to that, I would just turn around and I would just drain them, stir the through a colander or something like that, and then I'd eventually because it's the pips that will make it bitter.
Yeah.
Not that it worries your home cooking.
No, it doesn't worry my home
Doesn't
cooking.
worry your home cooking. But the passata, what I do is when it sits in the pot, and because I usually end up doing it late in the afternoon and I leave it overnight and I get to it the next morning, there's that much water in tomato water on top of the tomatoes, so I take all that off. And I've got this rich sauce on the bottom, which is like that thick sauce that you buy in the bottles in the shop. Yes. Then I put it into the jars, and then I seal it, and then I put it in the Fowler's thing. Or this year I'll use this.
Okay, now another one I've got is grape juice. I make my own grape juice, and what you do is you get just your grapes. I pull them all off from the stems, and I've washed them and I pull them all off. I actually put a little bit of water in them, and then just bring them to the boil, and they'll boil and boil and boil and boil. Probably, I can't even remember how long I boiled them for. Maybe quarter of an hour, half an hour. I can't remember. Do you?
Yeah, it's usually about half an hour.
Yeah, and then I strain them. And all the bits and pieces stay behind in your colander. The juice is what I put in there, and then I put that in my Vacolas, and I seal it in little bottles like this. I save all these sort of shaped bottles that people throw out. I love that size bottle because it just suits me. And sometimes I even like smaller bottles, because they're great. Because when you want to have a drink of grape juice, you don't want a full big bottle always. You just want a little one that's still sealed, so you don't have to open it and it just goes off.
Now, while I think of it, with the tomato, can I have yours, please? Because I didn't bring one. With the tomato passata, mine's quite thick, right? If you want to keep it for, even though it's in the preserving thing, if you want to keep it for a lifetime, put a bit of pure oil on top. Clean the inside of the jar, because it'll bubble up, and put a bit of pure oil inside. Now, I've had some that I've opened up 15 years later. You wouldn't know that it wasn't done yesterday. And I just get a spoon, or just don't even worry about the oil, a little bit of oil on top. But I usually put about that much oil on. It seals it. The same as any sauce that... I've probably got a plum sauce there. I didn't even think of bringing that either. It's down the back. That it's at least 20 years old, and it's still got the oil on top, and there's nothing wrong with a plum sauce.
So you put the oil, you don't
Put it-
rub the rim.
No, you put it.
on top of the...
No, you put it on top of your juice, on top of the thing there, and that's just another form of.
See, oil will
of
sort of
seal.
float too.
Yeah, and oil floats and it seals. Even if you turn your jar upside down and then turn it back, the oil will still eventually come to the top because it's lighter. And no, I just use pure olive oil. That's all I use, just the plain olive oil.
Okay.
Before you go on, when you said that, you'll know when with those little jars whether they've sealed or not. If it doesn't seal, can you
Redo them again, yes. You redo them. But what I do, if it hasn't sealed, I will actually open it up and reseal it. Because sometimes you'll never seal it. It'll just be, I've got the wrong lid for the wrong jar, and you just turn it and turn it and turn it and turn it, it'll never seal. But these sort of jars are great. So save all your little jars, especially if you live with only I'm always saving jars. Peter always says, do we need more jars? More jars?
Peter doesn't want to come to my house then.
I just don't like throwing out jars. I like them because I know that I'll use them, because there's been times I've looked, if you knew how many preserves, I'm like Beryl, just the preserves
I did
there.
500 of them, 500 jars we had when the children were growing up, and I did 500 of them.
Okay, so...
So the Fowler's ones need to go in the Fowler's...
No. You
they
can
cook them
use
in
the
here.
Fowlers as well as that. Now, the reason we go, I've personally gone, I've still got all my Fowlers, I've still got all the rings. But what really I stopped using them is because every time you open them up, you've got to buy more rings. Okay? These are so common now, and they've got a little seal in there, and you can use them, and they're ideal because these are just so much bigger. I mean, I've got the larger ones, you know, these fowlers that are that large, and sure, they're nice and they're great for a family, but you know, sometimes you only want a small amount, and so I just use this. But you treat them both the same. The jars you can use, the fowler's jars but you've got to put the clip on them, and you know, understand as you're sealing them, and when they cool down, you take the clip off. But these are great because these are ideal.
They still have to go in the fowler's pot,
Yes,
so don't they?
yes.
Include the little jars with
Yes.
The little jars.
Yeah. But what I do is when I put them all in the little pot, I've got the electric one, I'll just stack them all up here. They'll sit on top of each other like this in the jar, you know. You can stack quite a few in there.
The other thing is that you can get, for large families, you can get what's called a 65s, and they're big round jars like
Yeah.
that. And I used to make the passata sauce and cook spaghetti and put layer and layer and layer and layer, and used to do the same thing with the beans and then just put it in the jars. We just open one of them for breakfast for the kids. So you can still do the same thing with that size jar, but so long as everything is cooked properly, you're fine, you know.
Okay, so
Now,
we
can I say something
Yep.
first? I want to show you a failure. I made the tomato soup yesterday, tomato and red capsicum. Now, this one's sealed. This is the first one that I've had, actually. It didn't seal.
you can hear there's a button on the top.
I don't know why it didn't seal.
Yeah,
So-
you can hear it. You can hear it go, and there's a
but
little
I
movement.
can undo it, but see, maybe I put the wrong lid on the wrong jar.
Yeah, that's
I
often
don't know.
happens.
But when I picked it up this morning, I looked at it and went, hang on a minute, that's not sealed. There's a failure. So that tomato soup, well...
So you either use it straight away as
Yeah.
food or you reprocess it.
No, I'll use it as food. That's dinner
Okay, so there's
tonight.
either two options. Okay, so now we go, any more questions, we can go back to that later. But now this is the one that I think most people don't know about. And this is called pressure canning. And this is our pressure canner, and it's quite a heavy, I'll just take those away. It's quite a heavy thing. It's got got a lot of weight in it. Now, Beryl says that this is brand new, it hasn't been used yet, but Beryl says this is a better one because it is actually been, it's used on the gas, on the
It's an
electric,
induction
well,
one.
it's also an induction one.
Which
this
means
is-
the one I've got isn't an induction one. So if you've got a modern stove, you can put that on,
That's the,
if you've got a modern one.
and you can use this. This can also be used to do the water canning. So
Yes.
this, you can fill it with water, and
You
use
just-
it as a saucepan.
And the thing is, when you're doing water canning, you fill it with the water with your fruit or vegetable, what you got in there. Don't put the valve on. You leave that open. You just put the lid on and you just leave that open because it's just got a bubble. Like you think of the Amish, they water bath everything. Everything is water bath for, and I think it's 2 hours. 2 hours plus, depending on what it is. But it's all water bathed, and it's all just stuck in water like that, and they just stick it on the shelves, and they're not dead yet.
Okay, so we're taught that the colas is what we would call water bathing. Now this is different, a completely different process, and it's called done with steam pressure. And this is what Beryl is the experienced one on this. She's experienced on everything. It's true, Gloria. What she doesn't know is not worth knowing. Okay. But I bought this. I went online. When she told me about it, I went online. It's got a little, what do you call it, a little rack to
Little rack on the
protect
bottom.
your jars down the bottom. And then we get this. This is what it is. And it's like a pressure cooker. You've got to really turn it on. You've got to put it on.
It's got arrows.
And it's quite hard.
Yeah, It's
Okay.
very hard to do up if you're not strong in your wrists, yeah.
I'll tell you where to get it in a minute.
The other thing is, with this, you can put your jars in, you put your 3.5...
Let's say
3.5
these.
Yeah, put 3.5 litres of water in there. That's all you put in.
Now, where does
Now,
it come up to?
Hang
Just
on.
tell them
You
where.
put this in first and you put your jars in. You put your 3.5 litres of water in. Now, you've got little tiny jars. I had a little tiny jar there before, but anyway, you can put a rack, or you get another one of them and you put that on top. You can layer it. You don't have to. If you've got jars that'll fit in there, say like that, and then I've got
Yeah,
another
like-
one like that on
yeah,
top.
You put a rack in between them and you can
and
lay.
you can, because they're done by pressure, they're not done by water. Because once that pressure's in there, you know, it's
Where would the 3.5 litres come up to it? Just mark
probably
your
about
finger.
there.
Okay, so it's not much water in there.
And
Where is
because
it?
you've got to let about there, you got to let the water. You got to, when you put your vegetable, you put your jars in, you put your lid on. Then you put it on that. Oh, it's on the heat. You turn the heat on now.
Let's work it. Let's imagine we've got jars in there.
Other way.
There's a special way this goes on, which I've learned.
And I don't have very big hands.
Okay, so
Now,
that's
you-
quite
yeah.
strong.
Now you bring it to the boil. It'll boil. It'll hiss out of here. It'll hiss like crazy. Now it's got a really, really hiss. It'll go, and then it goes shh. 10 minutes. That thing has to hiss like crazy for really, really hard steam. That's the most important thing. Then you put your jiggler on, and then this will pop up.
There's a little button
Little
there,
button there.
a steam release button. Can you?
Yeah.
I don't know if you can
Yeah.
see that.
And then your gauge will come to, you bring it up to 10, and then you adjust your heat to keep
This
it
has got to go on
10,
a
11.
stove. Remember, it's not
Yeah,
electric.
it's not electric, no. But the most important part is if you haven't got 10 minutes, and last night I was waiting for that to go, and it just didn't seem to get to the point. It was just hissing out steam, and I'm thinking, will you hurry up? And then all of a sudden, I moved it, and then it goes shh, you know. And then I timed it 10 minutes, and then I put the gauge on.
This little jiggler thing on.
Yeah. Yeah. And then 30 minutes later, I turned it off. Now it takes a while. You don't open anything because you'll get burnt and it'll explode and break all your jars. You wait until
It's
that's
cold.
gone down and the gauge has gone to 0 and there's nothing coming out of there. But that little pressure gauge has to go down first. And then you can open it, and you always turn it away from yourself because that is boiling steam. You just tilt it slightly away.
But is it still hot in there? Hasn't
Oh
it cooled?
yes, you can leave it in there till it cools down a bit, but a lot of people do. I leave it till it cools down a bit.
Yeah.
And this gauge,
There's two ones.
the one that most of them come with is the American gauge, which is the extra heavy one for the
Altitude. You see, what
over
we got to
there.
we're dealing with some altitude difference. Australia is different altitude, or wherever you live, and it impacts how the pressure of the canner works.
Now this is too heavy for Australian conditions, so we went and bought. I think yours come with this, didn't it?
No, you got
No.
it for me. I'll
Did
tell
I?
them later in a minute. Where I got
Anyway,
it from.
and each one of these is 5, 10, 15. Now that's a 15. We don't need a 15 in Australia, so you take the one gauge off. We only need a 10. I only need a 10. So you put the 10 on. And you put,
If you do use the 15, like what does it do?
the pressure is too strong in there. It's too strong for this atmosphere. I haven't experimented with it, but my friend told me that it cracked her jars, and it sort of overcooks everything to the point that it's not much chop.
Okay, so I'll tell you where I got mine from, first of all. I went online and I thought, I checked out $331 from Amazon. And I thought, Ozfarmer, was $330, but you had to pay for postage on it. And I thought, I looked up the postage. It was I thought it was reasonably expensive. So I bought mine from Amazon, and I regret it. I went back online and I contacted, and after we were talking about doing this program, I went online. I thought, look, I'll see if I can get some sort of deal going through Ozpharma. If they will do you put a code in and you can get so much off. And they said, look, we are already doing a super deal. There's a special on there on Ozpharma for $330, plus you get this in it.
You get the proper gauge.
You get the proper gauge because they're dealing with Australian people. It's an Australian company. They get the lifters out of. There was a few other little gifts they gave for you, and I thought to myself, well, look, really, what I paid for it wasn't worth it. And especially as I got it from Amazon, it certainly wasn't worthwhile going through Amazon. So this is Ozpharma is an Australian company, but ozpharma.com, $330. But be careful, on their page there's $330, but if you move across on the page you'll find there's a super special going on, $330, and that's where they include it. So make sure you look carefully online to find that exact special, because the special gives you all these extra things in there that is not on there, and it's easy to miss. I missed that the first time I went on there. I didn't see it, and it's like a $398 or something.
That's right.
It was
$400 now.
and but now they've got it for $330 with all these. So they've got a special on, and it's as long as stocks last. So, and it's a Mother's Day special. So if you want to get one, move into it and get it as quick as you can, because that's the reason. I think I looked online. I think it was maybe $20-something postage. So I'm not sure, but so just make sure you look carefully on that website. If you go to ozfarmers.com, ozfarmers.com, and look carefully on their web page, because if you miss it, you'll click on the one that's dearer than the special. Okay, so the special has a lot. Now, let's show some of what Beryl has done.
This is dry canning. This has no moisture in it other than itself.
What is it?
They're potatoes. I blanched them briefly, just in and out. Did I or didn't I? No, I didn't blanch them. I just tossed them in. No, let me think. No,
You got
go back.
oil in there?
Yeah, hang on. I did blanch these just briefly, very briefly. While they were still warm, I tipped them into a dish. I sprinkled some parsley, a little bit of salt. I don't think I put pepper in there. And because the recipe that I was looking at said put butter in. Well, I didn't want to use butter, so I used a little bit of oil. But because I blanched them, they got the mush on the bottom. But there was no liquid in them. Now, if I hadn't blanched them and just put them straight in there with all that, I wouldn't have got that. Not that that's any harm, do you know what I mean? But these, they're just packed in there raw. They're not anything else, and they're just tossed in a little bit of oil, and when I say oil, I mean a spoonful on it. I just mixed it all up and put them in there. I'm itching to try these things.
Okay, so here's some more.
With the pressure cooker as well, it doesn't matter what size jars.
No.
I mean, it's better to have
The same, roughly the same size jars.
When
like
you do
I
it-
wouldn't
if you
put
do
that
it-
in there with that. You know what I mean?
Okay, so
I wouldn't, because they're two different weights of jars.
Yes.
This is just plain potato.
is it cooked?
I didn't blanch it or anything. I just packed it in there, and I was going to experiment and do dry canning potatoes, because you can dry can potatoes. But let's just say I got the heebie-jeebies and I thought, I don't want to kill anybody, so I put some water in there and a bit of salt. Because one thing that I looked at said, you'll get botulism or something from dry canning. But the thing I've learnt since then is that don't pack them in tight.
for dry canning.
For dry canning, don't pack them in tight, because the pressure doesn't get into the inside, because a lot of people use big jars like what this one is, or bigger. You know, they're soups. They're just leftover soup, vegetable soup that you've got. If you make a big pot, you can just put the rest into the jars. Takes
Okay.
you a couple of hours to, while you're doing something in the kitchen, to do that. Saves money.
Okay, so you understand the difference. When we're doing water canning, which we talked about first, which we did for this, you can't
Water
do...
canning and
you-
Fowlers is a bit different, because
Yeah.
Fowlers, they have the lid sealed on, right? Usually on tight. Water canning, you can just put the lid on top, and
Yeah.
they're covered the same. It covers the same
But it
kind of
doesn't
thing.
get as hot.
Doesn't get as
And
hot.
it doesn't
It'll be
kill the
rolling boil.
botulism. You cannot do vegetables in
In-
the Fowlers. This is all fruit. And I mean, let's face it, the tomato is classed as a
Tomatoes
fruit.
are fruit.
Okay? The fruits can be done in the water, but vegetables cannot be done in water because you'll get botulism. Right,
Because
okay,
you've got to have the pressure. And as I said before, when that water is boiling, and there's not very much water in there, you think of all the steam that comes out before you put the jiggler on. That is actually just condensed steam that's in there that's actually cooking them like they would in a factory. It's the same kind of thing, the same kind of principle, yeah.
Okay, so here we've got some chickpeas. Now, they are obviously cooked before you put them in there.
Yes, they were.
They were cooked before you put them in there. And they're in liquid,
Yep,
and you've just put them in there and sealed them.
yep. They were in the liquid that I cooked them in.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
made too
Which is
many.
very nice. That liquid that you cook them in is called, they call it aquafaba, and you can
Aquafaba.
use that for a lot of things. It's very,
Yeah.
very tasty.
How long does it take with dry canning? So like to use it
The
for
same
water,
as you
it
would-
takes usually a while
Yeah, no, the same as what you would
for
with
Fowlers.
no, not for Fowlers, as you would for the these things. Same as you would for them.
Now, were you talking about dry canning, or when you
With
ask...
dry canning, I'm just wondering, because the Fowlers takes quite a few hours, obviously.
Now, just hold on. Let's just get this right. What do you mean by dry canning? Do you mean dry canning? This has got liquid in it. This is pressure canning,
Yeah, no, sorry, I mean the dry canning that you've bought your device to use, right?
not
Yeah.
dry canning. I'm
No,
not.
no. Oh, you're not doing dry canning in that?
I'm not.
Yes, you can do. That's what I did mine in.
Okay, so Beryl is doing dry canning. This is not what I call dry canning. Dry canning would be what I would get, let's say, some whole beans. Let's say some bolotti beans or chickpeas, dried chickpeas, and I want to preserve them and hold them, and I don't want them to go off. They will stay there for 30 years plus if you can them and you get rid of that moisture in there. And that's what I'm talking about. There's no water inside of the jar.
Yeah, but how, so that's good, because that like the potato there, that's dry canned, isn't it?
Yes.
That's dry canned.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's right. So how long does that take?
the same as what it would 30 minutes.
Oh, 30 minutes, okay.
I think I'd look after a few minutes longer because I was sidetracked. but
So
yeah,
30, you got to, but don't forget you got to do your 10 minutes first here,
Still-
and then 30 minutes with the steam.
that.
10 minutes first, but you first let it go till it whistles, then it goes for 10
it-
minutes while it's whistling
yeah.
the steam.
You got to get rid of the steam first. It's got to get rid of all that make-up steam that's in there, so
So
that
it
can
has
not.
to heat itself up first, then the steam will release.
And that can take 15, 20 minutes, if 20 minutes easy. And then you got to wait another 10 minutes till that thing hisses like
And
crazy.
once that's done, you put
The jiggler on,
and the little thing on the end here
Yeah.
as well, the other jigger.
you put the jiggler on there, and you'll find that the minute you put the jiggler on there, within a few minutes that little valve will pop up,
Right.
because that's sealed it inside. Because the jiggler's stopping all the steam, so the steam's building up inside, and that pushes the valve up.
And then you wait 30 minutes.
Then you wait 30 minutes for vegetables.
My suggestion is, and this is what I thought, Beryl said she loves hers, and I thought, well, look, I went online, I didn't know what brand to get, but Beryl has what you call a Presto pressure
Which is
can.
yours.
That's the brand name, Presto. And I thought, well, look, I'm going to go to Presto because I know it, and it's a good brand, and I'm happy with it. If I save $100 on buying some cheaper brand, I might regret it. So I thought, look, I'll just get the better one, and that she knows and she can help me with it.
There's a I don't know about that. But with the pressure canner, you can do anything in there as dry beans, like the potatoes. You can pressure. I peeled them. I haven't had time to do them. Carrots. You can pressure can dry carrots. You just slice your carrots up, put them in your jars. That's pumpkin, by the way. Put them in your jars. Put the lid on. Put them in there. Bring it up to the temperature, 10 pound, 30 minutes. Turn it off. Wait till it's cooled off enough to lift them out. And leave them in, and the following day you'll find they've got that much moisture in the bottom, but the moisture comes from the carrots.
But so that's actually still considered dry canning?
That's
correct?
dry canning,
But
yes.
that's when you use that 3.5 litres of water, is dry
Yeah,
canning?
yes, it must have the water. This thing will
Both
not
are
work
both
without
ways.
water.
Whether you dry canning or whether you're canning in its own liquid, it's still got to have that little bit of water down the
It
bottom.
must have that water for the steam, because how can the steam create? It's the steam that preserves it. You know, that's
Okay,
the best part.
the dry canning for beans is my idea, or even grains are probably, because when you've got beans and your grains, you come back after 5 years, there's a storage life for these things, and you come back and they taste old, and you can taste them, and you can't seem to get that taste of oldness out of them. Oh, these are a bit stale. But if you did them with this, you would be able to preserve them. And people have preserved them for 30 plus years.
Yeah.
And you bring them out and they're just like they're fresh when you put them in.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that's an idea, because the other thing too, which I've just sidetracked, because I have got a lot of these tubs to store things in. Have you seen? These are just from Bunnings. Ideal to store anything in, and I've stored a lot of my dried
But
fruit in there.
they are food safe. That's most important.
Yeah, food safe, all-purpose fishing. But I was in a terrible pickle. They are so hard when you put them on to get off. Until Gloria told us about this.
She found it on the internet.
Found it online. Guess what this is called? And it's not deer. It's called a pail opener. Pail, P-A-I-L, pail opener. And I think I paid something like, $7 or $8 or something for that, but it's worth its weight in gold. I bought a few of them. Okay, guess what you do? You just put them like this, and you just...
Otherwise,
Well, look, for some of mine, I've got grain in some of mine. And you see, you need to get it vermin-proof if you're going to store things. If you've got storage...
and moisture-proof.
Yeah, and this is... when you put it on, and you get a hammer and you tap it on there, or a mallet, you tap it on there, it's like impossible to get it off again, and you've got to have a man around. I have no way can I get it off until Gloria told me about these little gadgets. And so I bought a few, because I thought to myself, because I've got... And not only that, if you ever find some, and I didn't bring it in, but sometimes I put them in little ones, and sometimes even them can be quite hard to get the lids off. And so you just get this on there, it's a little pail opener. It just works miracles.
Kevin,
so get yourself a few of them.
Kevin and I were wrestling with one of them.
Can you get different sizes?
No, it seems to be the same one. It doesn't matter. It'll do the little one as well as the big one. So you just put it on there. There's a little place here, wherever it is. No, it's not on these.
No, because
But
you've peeled the lip,
Yeah,
the lip off.
you've got to peel that.
It's got a lip.
There's a lip there. You peel it off, and before you can seal it properly, and you have to take that off. And then you just get as I said, you get a little rubber mallet around the edge, and it seals properly, and it is sealed, really sealed, and it's sealed so much you'll never open it. That's why. Pail openers to the rescue.
So you got that online?
Online, everything comes, and it comes from China. But that didn't worry me. That didn't, yes, that's right. But as I said, and I think it was even postage free. Sometimes you get a postage free, and I bought, I think, about quite a few of them, and I shared them around. I've given some away, and I've got some in there, and So it's ideal. So just remember, this is a good storage thing, because sometimes, and you can't...
You can get smaller ones of them too.
Yeah, but I don't put bottles in them like that. But this is for grain, or seeds, or
Beans.
beans,
Porridge.
beans. porridge, that sort of thing, or rolled oats or whatever you want to get. So they go in there. Looks like I even had some clay in there. And that's what I do, is I label them on the outside, because there's nothing worse than going back and say, which one have I got it in? Otherwise, and then you've got to go open them all again. So you just know, label them on the outside. So that's a good way to store your food.
There's a lot of information online for
Yes.
pressure canning. There is probably, I don't have the internet, so I've just got to grab it when I go somewhere. But the thing is that the things that I've seen that you can do with this canner is phenomenal. You can save your family, you know. And you can, not just for the hard times that are coming, but for difficult times when people are out of work or they're sick or something, there's always something there. The kids can come along and grab, go to my other friend who's got the other stuff. She's got her shelves on her. Her boys just go out and say, oh, I want some soup, or I want some spaghetti sauce or something. She says, you know where it is. Go and get it. You know, so you don't have to do anything to it other than open it and put it in, warm it up.
Oh, yes, a lot of people would just open it and just eat it too. You don't have to warm it up, just like the old cans of baked beans, isn't it? You can make your own baked beans in a bottle. And when, as I said, I'll just repeat it again, when we're talking about canner, we don't have the ability to can literally with cans. We're talking about bottling.
It's called a canner because originally over there they'd put the jars in there, but they had the ones with the big bolts on them, and they tightened them around. They're like that. And because it was in a can, that's where the can came from. You know, like, not a pot, we call it a pot, but they call it a can. And you can get, you can do this, and for the water bathing, you can do it, they've got rectangular ones, all sorts of shapes, you know. But it is difficult the first couple of times to learn. I marked my stove with the permanent marker. That's where 10 is, 10 pound is, you know, because it goes up and down. But you never leave it when you've got the jiggler on it. You stay there for that 30 minutes around so that you can keep track of it. If it drops below 10 pound, you have to start again. That's most important, because then you haven't got all the bacteria and everything else that's possibly killed it. It must never drop below the 10 pound, otherwise you just stop and start again. Bring it back up again and then time it from then. You know, that's most important.
Okay, ideally, if you've got it, you buy one of these, read the book. When in doubt, go to the manual. Yes, Judy?
How does this compare with the overflow?
With the what?
Overflow.
What overflow?
Well, with the preserving jars, you just boil it and then it overflow and then you put a seal on.
No, I don't do
No.
it that way.
You always have them, this one's a bit full, but they're usually about that far from the top, and half an inch to an inch. They say an inch surface space.
Yeah, they need a little bit of
But if you-
headroom, they call it.
Yeah, headroom. See, the beans have got headroom.
So with the overflow, you wouldn't get that.
No, you
No,
can't do that.
can't do that.
You've got to have that little space. So here's some mushrooms. How did you do those, Beryl?
Neroli's done them, so they've done the same way in the canner. They're just in water, salt water.
Here's some mint jelly.
Yeah.
What else have we got here? Oh, some of that chickpeas again. Green tomato, you told about that. Italian green tomato pickle.
Now see, that's green. They're the green tomatoes, and they do have vinegar and water and a few herbs in them, but not much herbs. That's the green tomatoes. Because green tomatoes you can use. People don't realise that you can cook with green tomatoes. We've been conditioned for the red ones.
I heard that green tomatoes, there is so much more nutrition in
Yes.
green tomatoes than there is in red tomatoes.
Try slicing them up and putting them in a pan and frying
So
them.
you used green tomatoes.
Green tomatoes, yeah. You can use green tomatoes.
There you go. See what Gloria, what she doesn't know. What's stoop?
Stoop is another word for a cross between a stew and soup. That's our version, our home family. And my friend has decided to call it stoop if it's a bit thicker than normal watery soup and it's not as thick as a stew, so we call it stoop.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
runny.
She's got beans and all sorts of things in there. Because soup is usually more liquid. The stew is more eat with a fork. This is stoop. You can do both.
Now, you obviously, when you're doing that, you have to have your beans cooked first.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, see, that would have been cooked first. They would have had a meal, and then she would have made that. But yeah.
Okay, so any questions? How did I what?
Seal the Makona jars.
I don't think they were sealed, were they? That's just storage. Is it? Or is it
It's
sealed?
sealed. Electrical tape. You know, like when you buy Makona coffee, it's always got that sticky stuff around it. That's to seal it. Even though this press is on tight, it's never airtight. So I got electrical tape and I just stretch it out and put it around there because electrical tape is waterproof and airproof. So
And so you've done that in here.
no, that's dehydrated.
Oh, that's not to go in here.
No, you don't put Makona jars in there. No, you can't put Makona. No.
They have to be a jar with a good lid. And tell them about the lids. They
Oh,
can't
yes.
be a dinted lid.
It cannot be a
I'll
lid
show you.
that's been damaged.
I had one here.
Sometimes when you try to
Here,
open them,
see, this is one here. You may not see that, but there is. When we've tried to open it, our grabber has actually got a little bit of a dint in the lid.
you don't use lids that are damaged. And the other thing is, if you're going to use these lids, the seal inside, that rubber part must be soft, pliable, and all the way around. Now see, I don't know whether you can see, right there where the dint is, the rubber's bumpy. So therefore there's your air vent so that it won't seal. You know, your bacteria will get in. But these lids you can buy online. I bought a packet of mixed sizes.
Can I open it?
Yeah. You get the large lids, small ones, all the different sizes, see?
You got them from Oz Farmers.
No, they came from Green Living because
Green Living.
because my
Green
friend
Living
couldn't
is-
get onto Ozfarm when I got her to order them for me.
I'll just read it to you. All one word, greenlivingaustralia.com.au. Greenlivingaustralia.com.au.
Yeah, and their prices are the same, except for that people you have to pay for freight. Some of them you don't. But she couldn't get onto the other one, so I just said, look, I've got to have them.
Yep.
And so she just got them for me.
What are they available from Oz Farmers?
Yes, they are. Yes.
Okay. So you can buy lids.
You just got to get the lids. You just measure, and when you measure your lids, because you can buy Pacific lids. Oh, crash. When you measure your lids, you lay it down flat. You measure from that outside.
Where you were standing.
That's
Yeah.
Okay.
You measure across. See, I think this is a 73 off the top of my head. These are
Side to outside.
These are 53s, the Dolmio type lids, you know. And then the little ones, I don't know what they are, I haven't checked them out. But yeah, but you measure across. But when you go online and you see all the things up there, like my friend was showing me, I said, well, you know, they're the ones I want. I said, just give me a bag of mixed ones for the time being and a bag of the 53s, because I've got more jars like that.
Can you use the colas in your pressure canner?
Yes, you can.
But you'd have to use good rings and all that.
You'd have to make sure. If I was to use it, I would put 4 clips on, 2 clips, you know. I wouldn't use it just the one. I'd use 2 clips.
crisscross the clips.
crisscross them. I do that even myself in the Fowler's thing. But I would imagine that the rings would perish fairly quickly because they're more exposed than the ones that are in the jars. So I only buy stainless steel lids. But see, Fowler's are just about finished now. But Fowler's actually have one of these. They do have a proper one of their own.
Fowler's actually have, which I bought, they have some fermenting kits too. They're like these lids with a hole in them, and they've got a little
Airlock.
airlock thing, and then you come out and it'll actually ferment. I bought some, and they're ideal. They're a lot cheaper. They're the best ones for the price that I've bought. That's another one.
You could use them when you do your dry canning, those lids,
No.
No, yes, you can use these.
These.
Yeah,
The
these.
fermenting ones.
No. They've got
no.
a hole in them. Okay.
No. I don't know about these with dry canning, but I would imagine all you can do is try. But I would try one within a day or so of eating it and see if it's okay, you know. I'm only new at this. I'm not experienced, but I've been around it for a while. That's the only difference.
Do you have to have it full?
The canner, no, you don't have to have it full. They suggest that you put a minimum of about 4 in there of the same size.
And the idea is, they said, when you first started off it, run it first without anything in it, just do the water in it, okay, and get your steam up and just practice it with the water in, but without any food in there.
Because you'll get a surprise how long this first burst of steam, you think, oh, that's right. You run your hand over it, yes, it's steam. But when it goes psh, like it does, you can't hold your hand there because it'll burn you. You know what I mean?
And with that, you have to wait, obviously, till it cools before you change the jars, don't you?
You have to wait until it's cooled off. Yeah, you can't open it until the pressure's all gone, until it's cooled off. And when you lift them out, put them onto a board with a tea towel or something on them. Never sit them on anything cold because they'll crack. And then what I do is I always put a towel over the top just to give them that extra preserving time.
So, been very interesting, hasn't it? There's one, any more questions on that? Because otherwise I was going to show you briefly some of the other, just briefly, one other thing which I wanted to show with you, and that is microgreens. How to make your own fresh greens. They are so easy to do, so easy to do. I just want to share with you what I've got here.
That's yours. Oh, look what you've got down there.
Now what I do is I'm doing a pea. That's a pea, and that is sunflower seeds, okay? Now they're not quite ready yet. Very hard to gauge them because these take less than, in the summer they're growing so quickly. They'd be ready in about 7-8 days. They're taking about 9 or 10 days. Not quite 2 weeks. But what I do is I measure out, I've got a container of sunflower seeds, and they're special sprouting sunflower seeds. They're not the sunflower seeds that you buy in the supermarket as to eating. This is a different one. You need to be buying sprouting seeds. And I measure out a quarter of a cup, just a scant quarter of a cup. Now you can measure out as much as you want, but I've just worked out because the containers that I'm using are these containers. They're just trays I bought from the China shop in Lavington's shopping centre. You know, they're a little tray. I've even used the takeaway trays that you buy food in. I've used them. You could use a larger one, a smaller one, but I got the idea that this is right size for 2 of us. That's ideal. That will last us for nearly a week till the next one comes. I do them once a week. So I've got them all the time coming in. And so what I do is I bought 8 of these. And so what I'll do to make them, I do a quarter of a cup of sunflower, a quarter of a cup of pea seeds. I soak them. You need to soak them for probably about, even if I've left them for a day, that's still safe, okay? But maybe at least 12 to 24 hours. Then I just drain them, and then I water them, just like sprouts. I give them, pour more water over them twice a day. After about 2.5 days, they're ready to go in soil. Now, this is why these are not sprouts. They're called microgreens. Now, what I've done here, I've got my seeds. They're sprouted seeds. They're growing on top there. And these are the pea seeds here. Now, when I'm first growing them, I grow them and I put weights on them. Now, they're just ideal to have another tray like that on top of them.
You just sprinkle the seeds on top of
Yeah, I do. I didn't even bury the seeds, although I do bury the peas a little bit. You don't have to. But what I do with the soil, by the way, for the soil in these, I've got half soil mix, a proper bag of soil mix, a good quality soil mix, and I use half of a very good topsoil, which I got from my son-in-law's farm. He has beautiful topsoil. You can even just use normal dirt. You don't have to use proper soil, but that's what I do. Then after I put them in there, I allow them to grow. After a couple of days, you take the trays off and you just let them grow up. And that's what they are. Watering them every day. Every day they need to be watered. And at the start, I've got a misty water on my kitchen, and I just put my hand over there. I just put a little bit of water on, and I put my hand over there, and I tip the water off. Any excess there. So there's no excess water in there. I do that to both the trays.
So you don't have drainage?
No, there's no drainage holes in these. So every day, but I just water them a little bit, and I know not to put too much on there, and then I just hold it and I tip out the excess. And they just grow beautifully. And then I bring them out, towards the end I bring them out to the sun, out in the kitchen window. And then you just cut them off, get some scissors and cut them off down the bottom, and you can store them in a container in your fridge for a couple of days or a week. A couple of weeks they'll store. And you can just eat fresh greens all the time.
What kind of peas?
These are just called sprouting peas. That's what they are. Now, this is the sunflower seeds you can't get 2 harvests off. But these, if you cut them off right down at the roots, this is my second harvest on the same peas. And I will get another. I've purposely brought this one. They look a bit straggly, and that's because it's a second harvest. But I started this you remember here last year when lettuce got so dear? And I thought, we need fresh greens every day. Where am I going to get my fresh greens from every day? And I thought of sprouting, which is great. But I thought I'd try this, and I really taken to it. It's so easy to do, and it doesn't take much. I think it's even easier than sprouts. I've had absolutely no failures with it. I've had no mould. I've had nothing like that. I'm not saying that but I did buy sprouting seeds.
Where did you get them from?
And I've forgotten where. I got them from a company in Queensland. Okay.
How do you throw out the soil?
When the soil is finished, we just put it in our compost.
Okay.
It's a compostable soil, and it's got lots of whatever in it, and so you just throw it out. Yeah. So that's microgreens. It's different than sprouts because it's got soil in it. That's different. So any other questions?
So after how many days before you cut them?
Oh, that one be ready to cut now. You can see how high you want it to get. That's not quite ready. And this one actually has the sunflower seed pods on there they'll just come off, And sometimes they don't come off and you can just pull them off with your hand. Like sometimes it's just fascinating. But you know, I like sitting them on I bought this little tray here because that sits across just under my kitchen window, and I actually like coming along during the day, and I like turning it around because guess what'll happen tomorrow? After an hour or so, they'll be back going the other way because it follows the sun. I just like to give them a little bit of a tease.
Dry those sunflower seeds that you just
Yes, I could. What I've often done is I've just cut excess off and I've just chopped them into my anything. They go in any stews. They're highly nutritious. And you could dry them too. It's like any excess, like people, you get all of a sudden you get all these heads of lettuce come in your garden all at the same time. You could dehydrate them.
I have a jar at home about that big, full of shredded lettuce from my friend, and she has a contract with one of the supermarkets, and they said, "Oh, here, take this, give this to your animals." Anyway, so she said, "I've got a box of lettuces for your animals," and I looked at them, I thought, we were paying $12 each for these things just a while back. Anyway, so I put a couple in the fridge. I thought, I'll never eat them. And I could passing them out to the chickens because I only got a few chickens left, thanks to the fox. And anyway, so then I thought, and I said to my friend, I said, "What'd you do with all your lettuces?" And she says, "I've dehydrated them." I said, "What, lettuce?" She says, "Yeah." She says, "You don't have to put it on thinly. You can put it on reasonably thick, like I said with that spacer." And it was dry in no time. And I just put it in a jar. She says, "I just throw it in the meals because she's got 3 very large young men." And she says, "I just throw it in. They don't know what they're eating." She says, "And they've still got the vitamins." You know, she said, "Why waste it?"
Yeah, you can use lettuce. I've got a recipe in my book for lettuce soup, which is quite nice.
That's bok choy because she gave me, a whole lot of bok choy. What am I going to do with a whole? I mean, I can only eat maybe one in a couple of days, but goodness me. So I thought, oh, well, I've never done it before.
So we've got to think of getting nutrition on. You know, we're like women who have fed people, I'm sure that you're like that too. We've got to think of ways, how can we get nutrition into the people? Now, this is all very nutritious. This is highly nutritious food. That would be heaps more nutritious than an iceberg lettuce that you buy from the supermarket.
Absolutely, yeah. But I just take advantage of everything that comes in the house, ends up dehydrated or canned or something. Got to be careful, don't you? Or don't you, Gloria? And Diane knows that too. But yeah.
Any more questions? I would actually tip directly straight into the bucket the beans. Like, let's say a chickpeas, which I bought 20 kilos of chickpeas. I put the 20 kilos of chickpeas straight in there. I've also got some buckwheat, which I make all my flatbreads out of, and so I put them straight in there. Yet there's another couple there that sometimes I bought packets. I've just thrown in the separate packets and just sort of packed them in quite tight, and they go in there. So that's ideal. So they are excellent. As I said, they are great for your, long-term storage. You don't want to be in there too much because it's hard to get in and out of them.
The little oxygen thing.
Yeah, you can use the oxygen thing too.
You can get I think they call them bridal bags, or you can make them yourself out of a piece of curtain. You can put rice in there, tie it in a knot, and the rice absorbs the moisture. It doesn't go mouldy. It just absorbs the moisture and swells up, and sit it on top of your
So there you go. So you don't have to buy those little moisture things. You just put some rice in a little bag.
Is it like a calico bag or something?
Sorry?
You make it. Do you make your little bags?
I just use a piece of curtain. Curtain. The sheer stuff.
Oh, the sheer curtain.
You can actually buy those little bags from Spotlight and those things to
$2
put.
store,
for the $2.
They put the jewellery in or whatever.
Yeah, all that, yeah. That type of thing, yeah.
And you could put some rice in there that absorbs the moisture.
You can just get a piece of old net curtain that you've got and just cut a square and tie it with a bit of string or anything and stick a bit of rice in that. And that acts as an oxygen absorber.
That's for when you, say, putting your chickpeas in.
Yeah,
Something
yeah, you
like
think,
that,
or your
chickpeas, yeah.
grains, or anything like
Or
that.
rice or anything like that,
I
yeah.
did wash mine out with soapy water before I used it because I don't know what's in the factory when you buy it. So I just thought I'll wash it up with soapy water and dry it out. Made sure it was completely dry and the lid was dry, and then I put the stuff straight in there. Because then if you've got a mouse or something there, your mice cannot get into there. Sorry? Oh, in my shed, or wherever you've got a spot, you know, if you've got a... Some people have got it in their spare
Bottom
bedroom.
of your wardrobe, under the bed or anywhere.
Yeah, you can stack them. You could, or in your ceiling, wherever. Store them wherever.
Who's going to carve them up there? Super.
But they're
Strong
ideal.
man.
I mean, they cost, I think they're about $12.50 or something when I last bought them.
No, they're a bit more than that now.
Yeah, but...
They're about 20, yeah.
Are they?
20, yeah. Yep.
Oh, there you go.
Because I had a special before and I got two. two
Yeah, so,
extras.
but look, they are worth it because when you empty them, you can put more stuff into them. But and you've got to be thinking long term. You've got to be thinking. You know, this is like prepping. You've seen those shows on television when they're preppers, how some people have got like those. You know, those containers buried underground, and they've got rooms underground, they've got shelves of cans and everything. But you know what? I don't think like that. I'm not like that. Yes, I'm thinking practically, but I'm not thinking, I believe if God's going to take, if we're in a situation like that where our food, because our food and water, God says your food and water will be sure if you trust him. And that's what we have to do. And that's what it is. We know that.
And these can be put onto a wood stove. That's the difference. If the power goes out or something like that, these can be put onto a wood stove. I am chasing someone to make me a circle with 4 legs and to put a pot on, you know, above a fire.
And do you know something? I've often stayed. I've done some talks in different places, but the one place that many times I've gone back to the same place, and is in Fiji. And you know, they have just got simple things. You know what they cook? They all cook them, this sort of things, but they've got a bit of, in the corner, they've got a cook room, you know, like it's just a shanty type of shed, and they've got some bricks and puts a fire under there, and that's what they burn, and they cook all their food on it. And they've even got an oven where somebody has made it from an old 44-gallon drum. They've laid it on its side, and they put a fire under it, and they've got a hinged door to it, and that's where they bake their bread in there. And they're just used to it. They just know how much fire to put on it. So, you know, where there's a will, there's a way. You know, if one day when our electricity goes out...
It's thinking outside your square.
Yeah.
Which a lot, you know, it can be quite difficult considering we've all been nurtured into this soft life.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and we're not going to stay soft for too much longer.
No, I think that we're on the verge of... I think it's a very small window of time we've got now to learn these things, to teach these things, because I think there's going to be a lot of hardship in the future. A lot of people, and you know, and you go online, you realise that they are definitely looking to destroy our food supplies.
With these, you can even make up jars that size. You can even make up like a lasagna in it. You put a sauce on the bottom, a bit of tomato or something on the bottom. You can use your zucchini or eggplant or pasta. Then you can put something else, some lentils or something. Then you do it again and again.
A meal in a jar.
A meal in a jar.
Have you ever tried that? Sometimes you can buy plastic, like, you know, like a plastic jar. Maybe you get your peanut butter in there or something with the different lids. Have you ever tried using them?
No, I haven't. No.
Okay, I just wondered. Because, you know, sometimes you can use it. There is, like sometimes you buy olives and they're in a sort of a plasticky jar.
But they're still plastic.
Still plastic.
True.
You know what's in plastic.
You don't want to go there.
True. Now, I want to just before we go on to our next our meal, okay, I would like to ask you, have you got any thoughts on what you would like us to hear? You know, like what sort of meetings you would like to have. You know, this is just completely different. But have you ever got any thoughts? Because we sat there talking, one of our talks, we even got onto gardening, what you've got to do for gardening. And I thought, you know,
Yeah, gardening doesn't have to be beds like that. It doesn't have to be, it can be grown in bottles on the wall. It does not have to be. Yeah, you know, you can grow all you need is a wall and a piece of plank. You can grow anything on it and in it. It does not have to be. I've grown tomatoes out of water bottles just growing on the wall. You know, you can, it's outside your thinking program.
sorry? Hessian bags, yeah.
Yes,
Okay,
they
we've
are.
got to think outside the box but not only that, where do we get our seeds from? I had a great, see, one of my problems is that I don't believe the seeds which you're buying from this, like, let's say Bunnings or wherever, you go there, something's happening to the plants, the punnets, the plants, they're not yielding like they should. There's something.
Commercial seed growers get the top seeds, and that's the light seeds that come off the bottom that you
The
buy.
generic seeds.
Well, we have sort of like a day, a resources, so we could get all the resources where we can get all of these things and sort of combine it, everybody's knowledge.
Well, that's what I was hoping today someone could
Well, someone else has
contribute
got
to me.
knowledge. I would somewhat like, if anybody's got any knowledge on gardening, let me know. Anyone's got any knowledge on essential oils, I'd like to get into that.
Soap. You know, just things like, you know, make,
So if we all gather what we've got and then we can
Yeah.
do it at some
How do you make your soap?
yeah, that's right.
I know the person who knows how to make. My
Yeah.
sister knows how to make soap.
Oh,
Susan,
grab her.
you learned how to make soap. Yeah,
Yeah.
you made a lot of products, haven't you? Yeah. You're still making them? Okay, there you go. This is what we need to
But
get onto.
We need these things for ourselves and our families.
Yeah.
You know, we're not doing this to sell or anything like that. It's not. It's not about that.
But obviously, like as Beryl said, even if we do it for ourselves, but it's got to be safe, you know,
Gotta be
because
safe.
because we know, and I've never bottled vegetables because I know you can't bottle vegetables in the Vicola's bottle because just exactly what we said, you could kill people, and people do die from this because of improperly canned food.
People die very quickly from botulism.
Yeah.
What do you put in those aged jars?
The what jars?
Aged.
I can't hear.
Which jars are you talking about?
Yes, I'll be doing this, but I haven't done this yet with them. That's all. I'll be putting the same thing as what the jars that you gave me. Putting them in here, yeah. Same thing, yeah.
So if you
So that
feel
the food is there.
feel free to come up and feel the weight of that. As I said, it's quite a heavy thing. But if you want to get onto that ozfarmer.com, I think it's a Queensland place, and it's got. But remember to look for the special, because if you don't, you'll be paying $390 something, and yet over further, it's exactly the same thing, and it's $330. So just be ready for that one. Any more questions?
Is there any reason you recommend that for the stovetop versus electric? Obviously, if our power went out.
That's the reason. Okay, that's the reason is because I don't even know if they have an electric version of this.
No, they don't. No, they don't. There's no electric versions of this unless it's a commercial one. And you need about $20,000 to buy a commercial one.
So we were even reflecting on the fact that there is also a freeze dryer. What is it?
Freeze dryer.
Yeah.
What I wouldn't give to have a freeze dryer. But still, a freeze dryer works a lot quicker than that. But it's got to be established in the house on a wall where you've got water, and it's got to be established in one place. You can't, and they can $10,000, $3,000 to $10,000.
Yes? $8,000.
$8,000, yeah.
Yeah.
I knew they were, I saw them advertised recently.
But I
for
I
free.
went online and I saw some, and it seems like they are a bit cheaper at different places. So
That's
I think
right.
you'd have to shop around.
You
on
have
that
to
one.
shop around, yeah.
But I mean, yeah. And quite frankly, it's a little bit beyond most people. I think this is more doable. And the freeze dry, you're getting really what the same benefits in the freeze dryer in this sort of food, you know, like
If you have a young family and young families and you combine, and everybody puts everything in and you can spread it around after it's freeze dried, you know.
yeah.
That's the way to do it. We need to learn to give to others.
But you'd have to have a place where you could actually buy, or you'd really be better if you grew your own veggies for a
that's
freeze
right,
dryer,
yeah.
or you had your own orchard. But if you've got to go out and buy it, it's really, you're losing the benefit of it because it's not as practical. Yeah.
There's a device, I think I mentioned this to you when I went to Cape. There's a pot that's very similar to this pot. And so in my brain, I'm doing a look at which one I get. So this one's way cheaper. The other one's like nearly $800. That's including postage from America. But it's got the bells and whistles, like you said, where they clamp it down.
Clamp it down,
Except the difference with it is, so you'd have to look at the electricity cost compared to, for the amount of money you're going to spend on the pot. It has two sizes of it, but it actually only takes 10 minutes from the minute it's in there, and then you can literally remove them there and then and put the new ones in. So you don't have to wait until it cools
Yeah.
down. So there's a little bit of difference, and the way I found it was these people in Australia, I found it online on YouTube, I was looking at stuff, and there's people in Australia who've used fowlers and that all their life. I don't know if they mentioned dry canning, they may have, because they were literally homesteaders doing all this stuff. They then found that pot that I'm talking about from America, and they said they would never go back to fowlers ever again, considering the quickness of it. So that's the only difference.
Yeah.
But that's why I asked about the timing. This is still a lot quicker than the fowlers anyway, and it's a lot more minimal cost. I suppose you just have to weigh up the amount that you can just quickly take them out and put your next ones in. You don't
Was
have
that
to-
electric?
It's not electric, but I've got a picture of it because I've been watching it on eBay for quite a while, so
Yeah.
I'll show you at the end.
Yeah.
Okay, so all very interesting, isn't it? Yes?
This week I saw on Facebook that a person had done a test with soil, like bags of soil, like you would use
Yeah.
here. And they bought their seedlings. They got 4 or 5 different types of soil and different brands, and they just cut holes in the top of the bags and planted their seedlings in there.
Yeah.
And their experiment showed that the Bunnings brand, it's in a green and white bag, all just flopped over within.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
And the others weren't nearly as bad, but some were
We-
better than others. But I can't tell you the brands, but the actual Bunnings brand is in a green and white or white with green picture on it.
Yeah.
Everything just
We are just up against so much now.
why
And
you
that's
make your
why
own
we have to,
compost.
and that's why it doesn't worry me about going out and digging up. You're finding a good place with good quality topsoil. If you have it, great, get some. And that's why I got some from my son-in-law's. He's got a beautiful, he's got a place down the creek, the water floods there, and it's really rich. Okay, but not everybody's got that. So where do you get it from? Where do you access it? Well, you've just got to do the best you can and just, make your own compost.
Yeah.
And I just think, so gardening, so that's another one to do, is to how do we help each other with our gardening knowledge. I mean, even Beryl was talking about even growing zucchinis, because we were reflecting on how my zucchinis this year, I got from soup. Did you get any? Okay, something has happened to the zucchini plants. And I didn't get any. I got 3 zucchinis this year. I had 4 plants in. And the only reason I got those zucchinis is I manually fertilised the male flower into the female flower. And I didn't even know that was why. For years I was getting none. Okay, I got a few, but was slowing down. And all of a sudden I realised my plants, I was looking for male flowers, there was none.
No male flowers.
There's no male flowers on there. So how could the bees, even if there was bees, they didn't fertilise because there was no male flowers. Now these were from, or wherever we got them from, Bunnings or wherever, I can't remember where we got these plants, but they were, and you need to manually fertilise it. So we've got to know now, And the place to get your seeds from is Seed Savers here in Albury, Wodonga Seed Savers. So you can get them from there. Yes. Yes.
And how to keep the seeds, because you can't have them in the heat because they don't germinate.
Yeah, they say even these seeds that I'm using and growing for my things, they said, oh, lucky to last 2 years, but you're supposed to keep them in the fridge. But, if you're like me, have you got enough room in your fridge to keep all these things?
I know someone that keeps them in, cookie tins.
In what?
Those old cookie tins,
Yeah.
actual tins. They keep all their seeds. Actually, I know who it is. It's a lady in Beechworth. She actually has a book about how she grows her gardening plants. You may have heard of her. And she does it all natural stuff. It's actually a really beautiful book. And she keeps all her seeds. Tells you to keep your cookie tins that people give you for Christmas.
Biscuit
with all
tins.
your seeds in that because it's dark, everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yes, that's it. Almar's where I got it. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, isn't it interesting, isn't it? Now, next Sunday, this coming Sunday, we've got another program here in the afternoon, and it's going to be on detoxing. No food, sorry. No food. Yeah, okay, but it's just only a program, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, usually goes 2 to 4, but it'll be on detoxing, different ways to detoxing. And there's different fasts you can do, and I'm going to share with you what we can do for the detoxing. So, I'll text you out when you get the information so you know that it's coming up, because I just can't say, you get just the text because your name's in the list and it just goes to whoever. So, just don't forget that. So that's coming up. Hopefully we can do them again on the last, we'd stopped a little bit this year, but last year we ran them in the last Tuesday of the month, Tuesday morning of the month. We'll just let you know if we can find a program next Tuesday in a month's time, and we'll see how it goes.
Is there anything else that anyone else would like to put forward that we could be doing?
What about survival tips where, for when the power does go off? And
Yeah, that's a good idea.
That's a good idea.
You're in the winter. I saw this, how to keep yourself warm with a couple of bricks and a candle under it
Yeah,
and a terracotta pot.
yeah,
Yeah, same thing.
And it'll warm a small room.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's ideal. We'll think about doing something like that. We've got to think outside the box, haven't we, Beryl?
Yes, we have, yes.
Yeah. Yes?
What about like natural herbs? Because I do think that the pharmaceutical, everything's going to go. I don't think you're going to be able to get anything. And
Yeah.
then when the time does come, say people do have chronic pain and
Yeah.
different things, and people are
Yep.
reliant on painkillers, what is some of the best, herbs, medicine to take?
Well, that's probably was covered in the talk we had on herbs, but it's not probably more specific. I can hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Also, the edible weeds.
yeah.
Like I go picking plankton.
Yeah, going picking plants, yeah.
Foraging.
Foraging, yes, that's what we call it. We call it foraging.
Yeah, foraging.
Yeah, I know, I've got some of them, yeah, I know. But there is a vast amount you can do, and you can use and you can eat, but there's only so much you can sort of put in a book. Yeah, it's like, but yet it's the idea is there to get you started to think like this, because remember, I keep saying, I just believe we're in store for something incredible to happen very soon. And if you follow and if you know that as a Christian in the Bible, you know that the times of trouble, remember Daniel said right at the book of Daniel, the first Daniel chapter 12 verse 1, he says that the world is in for a time of trouble such as the world has never seen before. Okay, now if you think back to the Holocaust, do you think that was terrible when the people were in the Holocaust? It says that's nothing to what's coming. The people are going to be starving, there's going to be no food, and you can see it's been all ready. We're ready for it. But one thing is most important is to have your spiritual life right. Because we can be doing all this, and yet we miss the point of it, don't we?
Yep.
You miss the point of it. We have to have our spiritual life right. That's the most important. So if anyone wants to talk to me about that, well, we're really to join in with our classes, on the spiritual aspect, that's ideal. So, anyhow, I see that the ladies have got you right up there. Everything's ready to go. Now, I did write on the text that it was a light lunch. I don't want to realise that it's going to be like a beautiful meal every single time. There's not going to be a smorgasbord every single time. So we've just got some soup and some bread and some spread. That's it today. Something simple, because guess what? It's just Waldina and I who are doing all of this, so, and it just gets to be, after a while, you just think, oh, not again. We'll do it. We love doing it, but it comes around very quickly. Yeah, so we want to share with you what you can do. Now, one of the bread there I just bought some bread from the supermarket. One was from Baker's Delight, but the homemade bread is gluten-free. The others are not gluten-free. So if you want a gluten-free one, you've got to go for the homemade bread, which some of the women out there said, how did I get it to rise? I said, well, this is just my recipe. And they said, oh, would you do that recipe for us? And I said, yeah, okay, I can do that one for you too. How to make nice gluten-free bread. And it's probably a touch overbaked. I left it in and I forgot to get it out probably about 10 minutes earlier. But it's still okay. No, this is one I've come across.
You can make your own compressed yeast without the sulphurs and without everything else from flour and water only. It's a process that takes about 10 days.
But that's a sourdough culture.
It's not quite a sourdough culture.
No, see,
Goes
you're
past
right,
that.
Gloria. What
Goes
she
past
knows is
that.
amazing.
It goes past the sourdough culture.
I just thought that I knew a lot of stuff, but this lady has just got like this incredible.
No.
Absolutely. Yes?
Maybe if you're looking for a thing to have, something like making the gluten-free bread and working out how to do the yeast in the same day would be a really good class.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So we invite you, please come along. Share with what we've got. We've got lots of tips to share you. Okay, so we should get on to our food. I think all we've got to do is you can head up the back. I think everything is ready. But actually what we'll do before you go up there and we'll start, let's say grace here first. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this time we've had together to share. But we just pray now for your blessings to rest on what we've prepared for the people, and may it nourish and strengthen them. And thank you for it. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, thank you.